The great hall of the Veltari Empire sparkled with silver lights that danced across the high crystal ceilings. Hundreds of alien nobles filled the grand chamber, wearing flowing robes that shimmered like waves under starlight. The scent of rare flowers floated through the air, and the sound of gentle music echoed off the shining pillars. It was a day of celebration, the official signing of peace between the Veltari Empire and the people of Earth. For the first time in history, humans stood beside the proud alien race that once saw them as primitive newcomers to the stars. Among the guards posted around the hall stood Ethan Cole, a tall human soldier dressed in dark blue armor polished to perfection. His face was calm, his eyes sharp, scanning every movement in the crowd. Though he was young, he carried the steady posture of someone trained for war but taught to protect. He was part of the Human Veltari Exchange Guard program, a project meant to build trust. Yet Ethan could feel that many eyes watched him with quiet suspicion. The nobles were polite, but they never fully trusted humans. To them, humans were unpredictable, too emotional, too direct, and too dangerous to understand. At the far end of the hall stood Princess Auralia Veltar, the shining jewel of her people. She was graceful, with soft violet skin that glowed faintly under the lights. Her silver eyes were calm yet powerful, and her voice carried wisdom far beyond her years. She was the one who believed in friendship with Earth. Many nobles didn't agree with her, but none could deny her courage. As the ceremony began, the Royal Council announced the beginning of a new age. Auralia stepped forward, holding a crystal scroll that carried the peace declaration. The hall fell silent. Ethan stood a few steps behind her, ready for anything. He could feel the weight of the moment, the hope of two worlds resting on this speech. Auralia smiled gently and began to speak. Her voice was soft and clear. For too long our stars have been divided by fear. But today we choose trust over distance and understanding over pride. Her words floated beautifully, and for a while everything felt perfect. Ethan watched her, proud to be a part of this historic day. But then, without warning, her words faltered. Her hand trembled, her eyes widened slightly, and her body swayed as if struck by an unseen force. The crystal scroll slipped from her fingers and shattered on the marble floor. Gasps filled the hall. "Your Highness," cried one of the nobles. Auralia's lips parted, but no sound came out. Her knees buckled, and she collapsed onto the steps of the dais. The soft glow of her skin faded into a pale blue. Her attendants rushed to her side, shouting for healers. The music stopped. The lights dimmed. Chaos broke the ceremony apart. Ethan moved instantly. His instincts, trained through years of battlefield experience, took control. He pushed through the crowd and knelt beside her. His gloved hand pressed gently against her neck. "She's alive," he said firmly, heartbeat weak. "Get her a medical team now." Several alien guards hesitated, unsure whether to let the human touch their princess. But Auralia's closest advisor, Elder Marin, gave a sharp nod. "Do as he says, now." The healers arrived with scanning devices that hummed and flashed with colored lights. Ethan stepped back slightly, his eyes scanning the entire hall for possible threats. He saw nothing, no weapon drawn, no attack, no visible source of danger. Yet his gut told him something unseen was at work. Minutes passed, but the healers looked more and more confused. "There is no poison," said one. "No biological toxin," added another. "Her systems are stable, but her consciousness is fading. How can that be?" Marin demanded. "Something caused this." Then a whisper spread through the crowd. A human was near her. Ethan felt the eyes of dozens of nobles turn toward him. Suspicion sharpened like knives in the air. One noble, tall and sharp-faced, stepped forward. "How convenient. The princess falls the moment the human stands guard." Ethan stood tall, his expression calm but his heart heavy. "If I wanted her harmed, I would not be the one saving her life," he said evenly. "But I'll find who did this, no matter what." Marin raised a hand. "Silence. No one leaves this hall until we know the truth." The massive doors sealed shut with a deep metallic echo. Guards lined the walls, keeping the crowd in place. Ethan's helmet visor activated, scanning for hidden energy readings. His suit's sensors detected something faint, an invisible pulse that flickered near the dais, just where Auralia had fallen. It wasn't radiation or gas. It was a frequency, like a small wave that passed through matter but not sound. He crouched near the spot and touched the marble floor. The faint pulse ran through his gloves, making his fingers tingle. It was not mechanical. It was alive, like the memory of a thought left behind. Strange, he whispered, almost like a mind echo. And what did you say? Marin asked. Ethan shook his head slightly. Not sure yet. I need more data. He stood and looked at the unconscious princess being carried away by the healers. Her face was peaceful as if she were in a deep dream. But Ethan noticed something. Her eyes moved beneath her eyelids rapidly, as though she was fighting something unseen in her mind. He followed them until the medics closed the chamber doors. Hours passed, and the royal hall turned into an investigation site. Every guard was questioned. Every cup of drink and every air filter was checked. The results came back clear, no physical cause. When Ethan returned to his small command post at the corner of the hall, a Velthari officer confronted him. You humans have strange minds. Perhaps you caused this without even knowing, Ethan replied calmly. Humans don't cause collapse by standing nearby, but someone wanted this to happen, and that means they planned it. The officer frowned but said nothing more. When night finally fell, the court was silent except for the hum of the palace's energy lines. Ethan stood near one of the great windows looking out at the glowing city below. It was beautiful. Towers made of crystal and gold, lights floating in the air like fireflies. But the beauty couldn't hide the danger that now filled the palace. He replayed the moment in his mind again and again. The speech, the fall, the strange pulse. Something unseen had struck, and it had chosen the very second humanity was being welcomed, too perfect to be chance. As he thought, a soft sound came from behind him. It was Seren, one of the Velthari medics who had helped with the princess earlier. She was gentle and kind, unlike many others who distrusted humans. She's stable, Seren said quietly. Alive, but her mind seems disconnected. We can't explain it. Disconnected? Ethan turned to her. Like a coma? Not exactly, Seren replied. It's like her consciousness is trapped somewhere else. The machines read her neural activity, but it doesn't match normal patterns. The next morning, the palace felt colder than before. The sun rose over the shining towers of the Velthari capital, but the light could not hide the unease spreading through the royal court. Guards stood at every gate. Nobles whispered behind closed doors. Even the servants spoke in low tones, afraid that someone might overhear the wrong word. The news had already spread across the city. Princess Auralia collapsed during the peace ceremony. Many believed it was a human's fault. Inside the secure wing of the palace, Ethan Cole walked through long silver corridors lined with glowing symbols. His boots made soft sounds against the marble floor. He had not slept much. His thoughts kept returning to the image of the princess falling, her pale face, her trembling hand, the strange energy ripple he had felt near her. He entered the command chamber, where screens and holograms filled the air with blue light. The royal investigation team was already at work, led by Elder Marin, and several alien scientists stood around a large display showing the data from the event. When Ethan approached, the room went quiet. Human, one of the nobles said sharply. You have been allowed here only because Elder Marin requested it. Do not think this means you are trusted. Ethan didn't answer. He simply nodded and looked at the data. Lines of energy readings scrolled across the screen. He studied them carefully. Most of it looked like background noise, normal palace energy signals, but one short pattern stood out. It appeared at the exact moment Auralia collapsed. What's this? Ethan asked, pointing at the pattern. The alien scientist adjusted the hologram. That is uncertain. It is not radiation, not electrical, not chemical. It is more like a pulse, Ethan finished for him. A wave, the scientist blinked. Yes, a wave too small for our sensors to fully capture. Ethan leaned closer. How long did it last? Less than a second. That was enough for him. A soldier's instinct often caught what machines missed. Someone used that pulse to attack her mind, he said quietly. Marin looked at him. You believe this was a psychic strike? Yes, Ethan said. The Velthari once had a group called the Mind Weavers, didn't they? They used to control thoughts. The nobles shifted uncomfortably. One of them hissed, That is a forbidden name. Those arts were destroyed long ago. Then how do you explain what happened? Ethan replied firmly. She wasn't poisoned. She wasn't shot. Something invisible hit her. Something that left no trace except this wave. The nobles fell silent. Marin stared at the data, then said slowly, If what you suggest is true, then the Empire is in great danger. Ethan nodded. And if someone inside the court used that kind of power, they will strike again. Later that day, Ethan walked to the medical chamber where Princess Auralia lay. The guards at the door hesitated to let him in, but Seren, the Veltari medic, met him there and waved him through. "She's still asleep," Seren said softly as they entered the quiet room. "Her body is stable, but her mind is trapped in deep resonance. It's like she's dreaming without waking." Ethan looked at her. The princess lay on a silver bed surrounded by floating light screens that monitored her health. Her face looked peaceful, but her eyelids moved as though she was fighting something unseen. Serene adjusted one of the scanners. "We tried every healing method we know. None of them work." Ethan folded his arms. "Show me the readings." Seren hesitated, then handed him a small data crystal. "Here, but the council will not like you seeing this. Let them complain later," he said quietly. "Right now, I just want to save her." He connected the crystal to his wrist display. The reading showed strange repeating energy lines like a heartbeat made of light. He frowned. "These patterns, they repeat every 10 seconds. "Yes," Seren said, "but they don't match any biological rhythm." "They're not biological," Ethan said. "They're a signal. Someone is keeping her mind trapped." Serene's eyes widened. "You mean she's being held?" "Exactly." They both stood in silence for a moment. Outside the room, the sound of guards patrolling echoed faintly. The air felt heavy with worry. Ethan turned toward the princess. Whoever did this wanted her silent. Maybe she discovered something before the ceremony. Serene looked at him with a mix of fear and hope. "You really think you can find out who did this?" "I will," Ethan said, "but I'll need your help." That night the palace was quiet again, but Ethan's mind was racing. He sat at his small desk surrounded by holoscreens. He replayed the ceremony recording again and again, slowing it down frame by frame. Just before Auralia fell, he saw a faint shimmer in the air near her throne. It lasted only a blink, a distortion like heat waves. He zoomed in. The shimmer wasn't random. It had a pattern, like a pulse repeating at a fixed rhythm. He ran it through his armor's analysis system. The system beeped your energy type unknown, source crystal node, frequency resonant, non-mechanical. Ethan frowned. "Crystal node?" He repeated. He searched the database. The Velthari used crystal nodes as data carriers or energy amplifiers, but they were not supposed to emit psychic frequencies unless someone had modified one. He remembered seeing a small glowing stone near the princess's dais when he helped her earlier. At the time, he thought it was decoration. Now he realized it might have been the device. Without wasting time, he left his room and moved quietly through the dim palace corridors. Most of the nobles were asleep, but a few guards patrolled the halls. He avoided them easily. His training made his movements silent. He reached the ceremonial hall, now sealed and empty. The lights were low. The shattered crystal scroll had already been cleared away. But near the throne, half hidden under the step, he found it, the small stone still faintly glowing. He crouched down and scanned it. The readings were clear now. Energy residue, active, neural frequency detected, response to human biosignals, positive. The last line made him stop. "Response to humans?" he whispered. That was impossible, or maybe it wasn't. He hesitated, then touched the crystal gently. A soft hum filled the air, and his armor's visor flickered. A whisper echoed faintly in his ears. Not sound, but something deeper, like a thought brushing against his mind. "She saw too much?" Ethan's eyes widened. He pulled his hand away quickly. The glow faded. He stood up, heart beating fast. Whoever placed this crystal here didn't just attack the princess. They left a psychic trap behind. And that voice confirmed it. The attack wasn't random. It was meant to silence her for knowing something dangerous. The next morning, the Royal Council gathered again. The hall was filled with tension. Rumors were spreading fast. Some believed humans had used secret weapons, others said the Empire was cursed. Ethan entered the room quietly, carrying a small metal case. Marin turned toward him. "Human, what are you doing here?" "I have something you should see," Ethan said, placing the case on the table. He opened it to reveal the small glowing crystal. The nobles gasped. "Where did you find that?" One demanded. "In the ceremony hall," Ethan said. "Hidden near the throne." Marin leaned closer, studying it. That looks like a psychic amplifier." Ethan nodded. "It reacts to living minds. When I touched it, it tried to communicate." Several nobles stepped back, frightened. "That technology is forbidden." "Then someone broke your laws," Ethan said sharply. "Someone who wanted her out of the way." The room fell silent. Marin looked thoughtful. "Do you know who?" "Not yet," Ethan said. But this device was tuned to the royal chamber's energy grid. Only someone with high access could place it there. The nobles began to murmur. The name of one powerful man whispered through the air. Lord Calix, head of the Security Council, and the strongest voice against human alliance. Ethan noticed their glances. Calix was standing near the dais when she collapsed, he said carefully. And he left before the investigation started. Marin's eyes hardened. "If what you say is true, we are facing treachery from within." Ethan closed the case. "Then I'll find proof. But if Calix is involved, he'll hide it well." Marin looked at him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Very well, human guard, you may proceed quietly." Ethan gave a small nod of thanks. As he turned to leave, he caught Seren's eyes across the room. She looked both afraid and hopeful. Outside the chamber, he whispered to himself, "You're not alone, Princess. I'll find who did this, and why." He walked down the long corridor, the case in his hand glowing faintly, as if the crystal itself knew that its secret was not safe anymore. Far away, the royal palace of the Veltari Empire stood tall under the pale sun, its spires shining like silver swords piercing the clouds. Yet inside those walls the air was heavy with suspicion. The nobles smiled in public, but behind their gentle faces, fear had taken root. For the first time in centuries, the royal court had been struck by an invisible force, one that even their wisdom could not explain. And only one man, a human, was hunting for the truth. Ethan Cole. The human guard walked through the palace corridors with quiet determination. His armor had small cracks from earlier scans. His face showed the tiredness of sleepless nights, but his eyes stayed sharp. Every step echoed his vow, to protect Princess Auralia and uncover who wanted her gone. The more he searched, the more resistance he faced. Doors that were once open to him now closed suddenly. Guards avoided his gaze. Even the servants spoke less when he passed by. Rumors had begun to spread. Some said he was cursed. Others whispered that he was secretly controlling the princess's fate. Yet Ethan didn't stop. His mind focused only on one thing, the strange crystal and the name that had appeared again and again in the whispers of the nobles. Lord Calix. Calix was one of the Empire's most respected leaders. He was tall, proud, and calm, with golden markings on his robe that showed his noble rank. He had always spoken against humans, calling them too reckless for galactic peace. But now his speeches had grown louder, his followers more aggressive. Ethan suspected that Calix had something to do with the psychic attack. That evening, Ethan met Seren, the Velthari medic, in a quiet garden filled with glowing plants. The moonlight reflected off the ponds and the sound of soft winds moved through the leaves. "You shouldn't be out here," Seren said softly, glancing around. "The nobles are watching you." "I know," Ethan replied. "But I found something." He placed a small datapad on the bench. A hologram appeared showing patterns of energy readings, one from the crystal he found and another from the palace's security network. Seren frowned. "What is this?" "Both frequencies match," Ethan said. "But look here." He pointed at a thin red line that connected two readings. "This trace leads to the palace's upper chamber, Calix's private lab." Serene's eyes widened. "That's impossible. His lab is sealed by royal code." Ethan looked at her calmly. "Then someone gave him access to things he shouldn't have." Seren bit her lip. "If you're right, then he's not just breaking laws. He's using ancient forbidden power." Ethan nodded. "The same power that attacked the princess." Later that night, Ethan moved quietly through the silent corridors. The palace lights dimmed for midnight rest. The guards had changed shifts, and the upper floors were mostly empty. He wore a dark cloak over his armor and carried a small device that could disrupt cameras for a few seconds. Each step had to be perfect. He reached the upper chamber, a grand door marked with golden seals. The code lock glowed faintly. Ethan took a deep breath, then pulled out a small scanner given by Seren. The device emitted a soft pulse, mimicking the energy of a royal ID. The lock flashed green. The door slid open. Inside, the room was dark except for faint blue light coming from a circular table covered in strange crystal shards. The air hummed with low energy, like whispers beneath the skin. Ethan stepped closer. Each shard glowed with the same color as the one he found near the throne. But these were larger, stronger. Symbols were carved into their surfaces. Old Velthari runes that told of mind control, memory breaking, and illusion. "This is it," he muttered. "Proof." Suddenly a deep voice echoed from behind him, looking for something human. Ethan turned fast, his hand moving to his sidearm. Standing at the entrance was Lord Calix, dressed in dark robes, his golden eyes gleaming. "I could ask you the same," Ethan said evenly. "You've been busy." Calix smiled faintly, his voice calm but filled with quiet power. "Humans never understand their place, always poking where they don't belong." Ethan took a slow step backward, keeping his eyes on the noble. "You attacked your own princess, why?" Calix's expression didn't change. "She was leading the Empire into weakness, joining hands with creatures from a death world, creatures like you. She forgot who we are." "So you tried to erase her mind?" Ethan asked. "That's not strength. That's fear." Calix chuckled softly. "You speak of fear? Your kind fights because you have nothing else. But the Velthari rule through the mind, and soon through every mind." Before Ethan could move, Calix lifted his hand. The air shimmered with a pulse of invisible force. Ethan felt it like a hammer inside his skull. He stumbled, dropping to one knee. His visor flashed red. Psychic interference detected. Calix stepped closer, his voice echoing through Ethan's head. "You humans think your will is strong. Let's test that." Ethan clenched his teeth as his vision blurred. Memories flashed before him. Battlefields, friends, pain, and fire. The psychic waves tried to twist his thoughts to break him from the inside. But humans had something the Velthari didn't: raw survival instinct. Ethan took a deep breath, forcing his focus. He activated his neural implant, the human-built system designed to resist telepathic control. Blue sparks glowed behind his visor. "Nice try," he said through gritted teeth. He pressed a button on his wrist, sending a short pulse through his armor's core. The pulse disrupted the psychic energy for a second, just enough for him to move. Ethan rushed forward, striking Calix's chest with his shoulder. The noble stumbled back, surprised by the human strength. One of the glowing crystals fell and shattered, releasing a burst of psychic energy that shook the room. Calix raised his hand again, fury in his eyes. "You will regret this, creature." But Ethan didn't stop. He grabbed a shard of the fallen crystal and slammed it against the control device on the table. Sparks flew as the whole chamber flashed with light. The psychic hum screamed like a storm inside his head. Ethan felt the wave push him against the wall. His armor flickered, warning signs flashing red. He barely stayed conscious. Then, as suddenly as it began, the light faded. Calix stood across the room, breathing heavily. His robe was torn, his face twisted in anger. The shards around him dimmed, no longer glowing. Ethan slowly stood. "Now I know the truth," he said quietly. "You used forbidden power to silence her, and you almost succeeded." Calix gave a dark smile. "You think you've won? You've seen only one room, human. There are others, many others. This empire was built on the mind's strength. You cannot stop it." He pressed a small device on his wrist. A flash of light filled the room, and when it cleared, Calix was gone. Ethan coughed, catching his breath. The crystals were cracked, but his armor's sensors still picked up psychic residue. He collected one fragment carefully and placed it into a sealed container. He looked around the ruined chamber. "I'll stop you," he whispered, "even if I have to tear down every shadow you hide behind." An hour later, Ethan met Seren in the medic wing. She was shocked to see the bruise on his face and the cracked armor. "What happened?" she asked quickly. "I found Calix," Ethan said. "He's behind it. He's using ancient psychic devices." Serene's eyes widened. "You confronted him? That's dangerous." "I didn't have a choice," Ethan said simply. He showed her the small fragment he had collected. "This proves everything. The crystals match the energy that hit the princess." Serene took the fragment carefully, her hands shaking. "If this is true, the council must know." Ethan shook his head. "Not yet. Calix has allies in the court. If we tell them now, they'll bury the truth." Seren looked uncertain. "Then what do we do?" Ethan looked at the chamber where the princess slept peacefully. "We protect her, and we find where he's hiding the rest of those crystals." He paused, lowering his voice. "Calix mentioned something, a group called the Mind Weavers. He said they still exist." Seren's face turned pale. "That's not possible. They were destroyed centuries ago." Then how does he have their power? Ethan asked. Seren didn't answer. The question hung in the air like a shadow. Outside, thunder rolled softly over the city. The storm was coming. Ethan looked out the window, watching lightning flash behind the tall spires. He's planning something bigger, he said quietly. And if I don't stop it next time, it won't just be the princess who falls. The palace corridors were quiet under the pale moonlight. Most of the Velthari slept, unaware of the danger that still lingered within the castle walls. Yet Ethan Cole moved silently, carrying a small case that held the psychic crystal fragment he had collected earlier. Behind him, Seren followed, her violet eyes wide with worry. The tunnels are below this floor, Ethan whispered. Calix can't hide the princess on the surface. He's too careful. Seren nodded, her hands clutching the medical scanner she had prepared. I hope she's still alive, she said softly. I've never seen anything like this. A mind trapped outside the body. If we fail? We won't fail, Ethan said, his voice firm. Not while I can move, not while I can think. She's still in there. We'll bring her back. They reached the hidden entrance in the palace's lower levels. The door was covered with centuries of dust and ancient Velthari runes. Ethan examined the symbols carefully, remembering what he had learned from his brief training in alien history. The runes were warnings, marks of the Mindweaver's ancient labyrinth, a place designed to trap intruders and test their minds. This won't be easy, Ethan said. Calix knows the passages better than anyone alive, Seren swallowed. Then we'll have to be smarter than he expects, Ethan nodded. Together they activated a small scanning device. A faint energy trace led downward into the darkness, pulsing like a heartbeat. They opened the door. A cold draft hit them, carrying the scent of metal and stone. Ethan switched on his helmet light. The tunnels stretched deep below the palace, twisting like veins under the city. Every step echoed loudly against the walls, and shadows danced with the movement of their lights. Keep your voice low, Ethan whispered. Calix may have left watchers, Seren nodded. Together they moved deeper into the labyrinth, following the psychic trace that would lead them to the princess. After several minutes, the energy readings grew stronger. Ethan crouched near the wall, scanning for traps. The floor shimmered faintly in spots, revealing thin layers of energy designed to detect intruders. Calix really wants her hidden, Ethan muttered. These traps aren't meant to kill, just to slow us down. He carefully moved through the first trap and then the second. Each time, the faint pulse of the crystal in his hand grew stronger. The princess was close. Finally, they entered a large circular chamber. The walls glowed with symbols etched into the stone by ancient Velthari hands. In the center of the room, Princess Auralia floated in mid-air, surrounded by a shimmering field of light. Her eyes were closed and her body was perfectly still, as if she were sleeping. But her mind was trapped somewhere else. Seren gasped. She's alive. Yes, Ethan said quietly, studying the field. But that energy, it's holding her mind separate from her body. It's a psychic cage. From the shadows, a voice echoed, cold, calm, and cruel. I wondered how long it would take you to reach her. Ethan spun. Lord Calix stepped from the shadows, his golden eyes gleaming with power. Around him, faint glows pulsed. More shards of the same psychic crystals they had seen before. You, Ethan shouted. Let her go. Calix smiled. You humans are always so bold. And so simple. You think you can fight what you cannot even touch? Ethan clenched his fists. We fight with will. Something your crystals will never understand. Calix laughed softly, lifting his hand. The psychic field around the princess pulsed violently. Ethan felt the pressure in his mind, like 1,000 hands pressing against his thoughts. He stumbled but held his balance. Seren, he shouted, use the device. Seren activated the medical scanner. It emitted a short wave, designed to disrupt psychic interference. Sparks flew across the chamber as the field trembled. For a moment, Auralia twitched in the air, her eyelids flickering. Calix's smile faltered. What are you doing? Ethan stepped closer to the field. He gritted his teeth. Human instinct, he said. We survive, we fight, and we protect. He touched the edge of the field with his armor-gloved hand. The crystal fragment in his case pulsed strongly, as if recognizing a kindred mind. For a moment, Ethan felt the princess's fear and confusion flood into his own mind. He felt her trapped consciousness reaching out desperately. You're safe, he whispered. I'm here. I won't let you fall. Auralia's eyes fluttered open inside the field, glowing faintly with psychic energy. Her voice echoed in Ethan's mind, soft and trembling. Who are you? I'm Ethan, he replied firmly. I'm your guard. I won't let him hurt you. Her mind focused on his words. Slowly, the psychic chains around her began to weaken. The field shivered. Calix's eyes widened. No, you cannot break it, he shouted, raising his hand higher. Energy arcs flew from his palm, striking the floor and walls. The chamber shook, but Ethan stayed close to the princess, keeping his connection steady. Seren. Now, Ethan shouted. Serene increased the scanner's pulse. The field around Auralia cracked like glass under pressure. The princess's body wavered, then fell slowly into Ethan's waiting arms. Calix screamed in fury, sending a final surge of energy. But Ethan had anticipated it. He pressed the crystal fragment against the main device powering the field. Sparks flew and the energy wave backfired. Calix staggered, his own psychic surge striking him instead. The field collapsed entirely. Auralia landed gently in Ethan's arms, breathing heavily but alive. Calix fell to the ground, struggling to regain control of his power. Ethan didn't hesitate. He grabbed a nearby metal rod and struck the device controlling the remaining crystals. They shattered into dust. The chamber fell silent. Only the faint hum of the palace energy remained. Auralia's eyes opened fully. She looked at Ethan, her violet gaze steadying. You saved me, she whispered. Ethan smiled faintly, setting her down safely. You were never alone, he said. I promised I wouldn't let you fall. Serene stepped forward, her eyes wide with relief. The crystals. They're destroyed. The field is gone. She's free. Auralia looked around, her breathing still uneven. Calix, she said softly. He wanted to control me, to erase my mind. He's dangerous. Ethan nodded. We know, but he stopped for now. The princess rose slowly, her hands glowing faintly with her own psychic energy. And we will make sure he can't hurt anyone else. Together, the three of them walked back through the tunnels, leaving the shattered crystals behind. Ethan carried one remaining fragment in a secure case, a piece of evidence they would need to expose Calix fully. Above them, the palace slept, unaware that its future had just been decided in the dark tunnels beneath. When they returned to the palace medbay, Auralia was placed carefully on a soft bed. The healers checked her, nodding with relief. She was alive, her mind finally restored, though still weak from the psychic attack. The nobles who had gathered gasped as they saw her enter the chamber safely, flanked by Ethan. Whispered voices spread quickly through the hall. The human saved her? Auralia lifted her head, her voice calm but firm. Yes, she said, he did. Not for glory, not for praise, but because it was the right thing to do. He saved me when others doubted him. The room fell silent. Even the most skeptical nobles could not deny the truth. Ethan stood quietly, his expression calm. He had done what he had come to do, but he knew this was only the beginning. Calix had been stopped for now, but his power ran deep in the court. There were still allies, still shadows in the halls, yet Ethan's human will remained unbroken. Outside, the moonlight reflected on the palace spires. Somewhere far above, the stars glimmered as if watching the courage of one human who dared to challenge the unseen powers of an alien empire. And for the first time, the Velthari realized that humans were not just warriors. They were protectors with hearts that refused to yield. The next morning, the palace was alive with whispers. Princess Auralia's safe return had spread through the halls like wildfire. Nobles and guards alike talked in hushed voices, trying to understand how one human had dared to challenge the greatest psychic powers of the Velthari Empire. In the medbay, Auralia sat upright on her bed, her violet eyes still glowing faintly from the residual psychic energy. Ethan stood beside her, quietly observing. His armor, slightly damaged from the encounter, was cleaned but still showed faint scratches, a sign of the fight he had endured. Seren entered, carrying a tablet filled with data from the shattered crystals. "I analyzed the remaining energy traces," she said. "They confirm what you suspected. Lord Calix's devices were tuned to his mind and they amplified the psychic field across the chamber." Aurelia nodded slowly. "He used our history against us. The Mindweaver techniques were forbidden, yet he restored them. He planned to control me, to make me a puppet of his will." Ethan's eyes hardened. "Then we can't let him hide in the shadows. The court must know the truth." Aurelia reached for his hand. "And we will reveal it, but carefully. There are still those loyal to him. If we accuse him too openly, it could divide the Empire." Ethan understood. Humans often acted directly, but diplomacy required patience. "Then we plan quietly, but we act swiftly." That afternoon, the Royal Council convened in the Grand Hall. The nobles gathered, their expressions a mixture of fear, suspicion, and curiosity. Many had watched the events unfold through hidden observers, waiting for proof, for confirmation of what they had heard in whispers. Aurelia entered the hall, her presence commanding silence. Ethan stood beside her. The nobles' eyes fell on him, some skeptical, others awed. "I have called this council," Aurelia began, her voice steady, "to reveal the truth about what happened during the peace ceremony." The hall held its breath. Aurelia continued. "I was attacked by a hidden power. My mind was trapped by a psychic field, created using forbidden techniques from the old Mindweavers. The person responsible is Lord Calix." A murmur ran through the crowd. Some gasped, others whispered angrily. Ethan stepped forward, placing the fragment of the crystal on the council table. "This crystal proves it. It was tuned to the princess's mind. I destroyed the field and stopped him. But the devices were his doing." Several nobles leaned forward, examining the crystal. "Impossible," one said. "No human could survive that attack and uncover the truth." Ethan's gaze was calm, unwavering. "Humans survive by will, by instinct. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. That is why I am here, and why she lives." Aurelia looked around the room, her eyes meeting each noble in turn. "The human who saved me is not only brave, he is honorable. He did not act for power or reward. He acted because it was the right thing to do. And now we must act against Calix before he harms anyone else." The council grew tense. A few nobles immediately spoke in support of Calix, insisting he could not have used such forbidden power. Others, more cautious, demanded proof. Aurelia raised her hand. "Look at the crystal," she said. "It contains the energy trace of the attack. It shows clearly the manipulation of psychic power and the Mindweaver techniques. And I confirm that Ethan Cole destroyed the field and rescued me from a fate none of us could endure alone." Murmurs became whispers, whispers became silence, and silence became agreement. One by one, the nobles nodded. Finally, Marin, the elder, spoke. "The evidence is clear. Calix violated the laws of the Empire and endangered the life of the princess. His actions cannot be ignored." A group of guards entered the hall led by Ethan. They secured the doors, ensuring no interference. Far away in the upper chambers, Lord Calix realized what had happened. The remaining shards of his crystals lay shattered. His plan, carefully orchestrated, had failed. Fury burned in his eyes, but there was no time to waste. He had underestimated humans, and underestimated one human in particular. Back in the council hall, Aurelia stood tall. "Ethan, will you testify to everything you saw? To everything he did?" "I will," Ethan said firmly. "He cannot hide in shadows anymore. The truth is clear, and the princess is safe because of human courage." With the evidence presented, the council debated for hours. Some feared the backlash from Calix's supporters. But with Ethan and Aurelia both present, the truth could not be denied. Finally, a decision was reached. Lord Calix would be stripped of his rank, his powers neutralized, and the remaining psychic crystals destroyed. He would be confined under supervision until the full extent of his influence could be investigated. The hall erupted in whispers again, but this time, they were whispers of relief. The Empire had survived the darkness. Aurelia turned to Ethan, a small smile on her lips. "Without you, none of this would have been possible." Ethan shook his head. "I did what I had to do. I only followed my duty. The credit is yours. You believed in peace even when others doubted." She studied him for a moment. "You are more than a guard, Ethan. You are a hero of this empire. And not just because of your strength, but because of your heart." The news of Ethan's bravery spread throughout the Velthari Empire. Humans, once viewed with skepticism, were now recognized as allies capable of courage, wisdom, and honor. Messages of gratitude and admiration poured in from nobles and citizens alike. Even the youngest students in the royal academies spoke of the human guard who had challenged ancient forbidden power and emerged victorious. Statues were proposed, honors were discussed, but Ethan remained quiet, humble, and steadfast. In private, however, Ethan and Auralia shared a quiet moment in the palace garden. "You saved my life," Auralia said softly, her violet eyes reflecting the moonlight. "I never thought I could trust anyone so completely outside my own people." Ethan smiled faintly. "You believed in me first. That's what matters." Auralia looked at him, her expression thoughtful. "I see now. Humans are not just warriors. You think, you feel, and you act with courage even when the odds are against you." Ethan nodded. "And that's why I protect those who cannot protect themselves." For a long moment the two stood quietly, listening to the wind rustle the glowing leaves around them. Outside, the palace was peaceful. Inside, the Empire had learned a valuable lesson. Sometimes, courage comes in forms unexpected, and sometimes, the smallest voice can save an entire world. Weeks later, the Empire celebrated the official peace treaty between the Velthari and humans. Auralia stood at the podium, smiling confidently. Beside her, Ethan stood tall, not as a guard, but as a symbol of trust, courage, and the strength of human will. The nobles who had once doubted humans now looked at Ethan with respect. The citizens cheered. The banners of both Velthari and Earth flew side by side. Ethan did not smile much. He rarely sought recognition, but as he glanced at Princess Auralia, her violet eyes shining with gratitude and strength, he felt a quiet satisfaction. He had fulfilled his duty, and more importantly, he had shown the Velthari Empire that humans were not only capable of surviving the stars, they could protect them, too. That night, as the celebrations quieted, Ethan walked through the palace corridors one last time. He passed the rooms where the psychic crystals had been destroyed, the chambers where the princess had been held, and the halls where nobles once whispered in fear. He paused at the grand window looking out over the glowing city. Stars stretched endlessly across the sky, reminding him of the vastness of the universe. Somewhere among those stars were countless dangers, countless mysteries. But he knew one thing. Wherever the unknown waited, humans would meet it with courage, heart, and determination. And sometimes one human could change the fate of an entire empire. Auralia's voice came softly from behind him. "The stars look brighter tonight, don't they?" Ethan nodded. "Yes, because we didn't let fear rule us. Because we acted when it mattered most," she smiled. "And because one human refused to let me fall." Ethan looked at her, a rare faint smile crossing his face. "Not just for you, for everyone. That's what humans do." Together, they stood quietly looking at the stars, knowing that the Empire was safe, that the truth had been revealed, and that courage, human courage, had triumphed. The Velthari Empire had learned an important lesson. The human heart was stronger than any crystal, more steadfast than any psychic field, and capable of changing the course of history. And in that moment, a new chapter began, one of respect, trust, and unity between worlds that had once been strangers. The end.